gong, or you feel like a pressure in your head. That's, now some people just call that Kundalini activation, but what's actually happening is that sometimes spontaneously, even during the day, your pineal gland just kicks up. It's like a car engine, and it suddenly gets going, and you feel this sort of explosive energy shooting up into your head. This is actually this mechanism, this machinery of electromagnetic charge, zooming around, doing all these different things to shield off the water inside to give you access. So if that ever happens, if you get that tone in your ears, just try to tune into the meditative state and get really clear and figure out what's the message of that moment. A lot of times it'll be that whatever happened right before you get the tone is something really important for your spiritual evolution. So you want
also seem like an excruciating headache?
It can. Headaches can happen, but that's when there's a blockage. That's when there's something in yourself that's not allowing this to fully open. And that, at that level, deals with not being able to see yourself as a sacred being. Seeing yourself as unholy, seeing yourself as impure. So it really does boil down to self-acceptance. When you're fully aware and self-accepting, you can fully open your pineal gland. And it requires a great deal of work, which is what we're getting into later in this talk. So the water becomes your conduit to time-space, the parallel reality, and then your interior retina in your third eye, because you actually do have three, records the visual images. That's what all the ancient cultures painted the bindi on their forehead for. DMT seems to accelerate the activity. LSD and other psychedelics force the pineal to release DMT. It's potentially dangerous, so I'm not recommending you go out and start tripping because your pineal can get stuck on even when you're awake. And that's the actual nature of schizophrenia, delusions, and waking hallucinations. There have been multiple studies that have been done proving that shamanic visionary experiences and schizophrenic hallucinatory experiences are almost identical. What the ancient shamans have happen to them is just about the same as what happens to schizos. It's just that the schizo is cracked. The walnut is cracked, as I call it, or the acorn, or the pine cone, right? If you have some of that electrical activity that doesn't know when to shut off, which could be also the melatonin, right? When the melatonin kicks out, it's telling you to go to sleep. That's what starts to fire up this engine. It's only when the DMT kicks out a little bit that the engine goes into full steam. But that's usually only after you fall asleep. But as you start to fall asleep, the melatonin starts to rev up the engine. Well, a schizophrenic doesn't get enough sleep. That's one of the things that every study has shown about schizophrenia. They are insomniacs. So if you do that enough, then melatonin more and more will start to be synthesized while you're awake, and it starts to open your gateway, and you start getting these hallucinations. So DMT is what's cracking that protection of keeping it electromagnetically dormant while you're awake. So it does very much look like the pineal gland is a natural hypergate. Now, here's another interesting thing. A colleague of mine discovered that the eardrum inside the ear is tilted on a weird angle. That's not straight up and down like you'd think it would be, or that you normally would imagine. It's tilted, and it actually tilts forward like this. So the eardrums look like this inside your head. Okay? What he found was that he could build microphones that had this orientation, like where they are in your head, and he gets a three-dimensional recording. So if I were to take one of these mics and put it here in the room, and then somebody ran over through the back screaming, and then we take his speakers, because he built holographic speakers, and you pop the speakers right there in the same exact room, and you press play on the tape recording, you're going to hear that person running behind the room as if they were there. You get a holographic sound. Now it makes sense, right? If light can be holographic, light is a vibration, why couldn't you do exactly the same thing with sound? This is how it's done. It's done by reverse engineering the way your ears already work. Because the human ear has a better three-dimensional tracking system than any other creature. The only creature that even comes close is the owl, which obviously for the hunting purposes. So we have a very unique hyperdimensional mechanism, and he actually also found that these lobes of the inner ear here are corresponding in the geometric angles to the Great Pyramid, the angles and slope of the Great Pyramid. So this is what happens. They're coplanar with a tetrahedron inside your head, the point of which comes out through the third eye center. And of course, the third eye is at the geometric center of this. So when you're going into the pineal gland, when you're falling asleep, you're going to lie down, you're going to tilt your head like this, Which way is the tetrahedron pointing now? Which way is the triangle going to be? Like this, right? And your eye is in the center. So doesn't that look a lot like this? So this is the secret, okay? There is a secret that has been kept right in front of our eyes. Nobody understands it. And again, as I said yesterday, I'm actually releasing this information for the first time. No one has ever made this public before. This is from deep in the Black Ops stuff. And I only was able to put the whole thing together from 7 different witness testimonies that all correlated independently of each other. That's how I found out that it's from the pineal gland. I'm not sure that they would want anybody to know this. So I am taking a risk at revealing this, but that's why I did it publicly first. Because this is what's happening. This is why this matters, okay? Could we reverse engineer the pineal gland? We have a basic system here. We have water that flips inside out. This allows you to see over into this other realm that we already know exists because we can prove in quantum physics that a particle turns into a wave and the wave is spaced out in time. Or has it already been done? Has it already been done? In fact, we have to ask ourselves, what are the needs? We need a barrel-shaped or pinecone-shaped container holding water, and it would have to be a special water. Then you have to have an electromagnetic shielding capability. Like I was saying, you got to have this system that can do all this kind of stuff inside in order to shield it off from space-time. You have to be able to fine-tune the fields because, as it turns out, how these little vibrations run has everything to do with where it goes. It's like Google Earth. Everybody here use Google Earth? You ever seen it? You can click on something and you zoom in on it. Well, that's what the fine-tuning of these fields does for you. It actually is like coordinates, latitude, longitude, and time. Then you need some kind of method to pick up the visual images. Now, normally in the pineal gland, you do it with the retinal tissue, but you don't have a retina when you're dealing with a machine, so what do? Well, what does a television use? It uses a cathode ray, right? It's a little thing that shoots onto this surface, and the electrons strike the surface, and they glow. Well, an ionized gas is going to glow if you strike it with this energy. So why not squirt an ionized gas in the middle, and then that might pick up the visual images? Well, this is what it looks like. This is real. This is, yesterday and today is the very first public unveiling in a public presentation of Project Looking Glass. A human being is about this tall. This is built in underground bases. It is colossal in size. And what happens is when you fire this thing up, these rings start going in all different directions. It shields off the barrel of water inside, which is just like your pineal gland. The water inside flips over into time-space, which then captures argon gas, captures visual images, and this is what it looks like. It becomes huge, glowing, all the way out to these posts, which are used as stabilizers for the energy field. Now, it doesn't start out with an image of the Earth. That's just there as a placeholder, although you could see the whole Earth like that if you wanted to. That's not usually what happens. Well, contact, right? We have been given the technology right in front of our faces in the movies. They just don't tell you what it's for.
13 Ghosts, that's got one of those as well.
In what?
I think it's called 13 Ghosts.
13 Ghosts? Well, thank you. I'll have to check that one out. Doesn't sound like a movie I'd want to see, but if it's for that...
It's horrible.
Oh, I can imagine. So contact, just to recap from yesterday, blueprints come in from the Vegans, from Vega. They figure out that it's only when you fold up these patterns into a cube, which forms what there in the center, the triangle with the eye in the middle, as it folds up, cube geometry, that's when you can decode the plans to build this, these rings, which becomes this machine. And there's your little helicopter. So there's another shot of it. They got computer animations of how it's going to work with the different rings moving. This actually looks like the fisheye lens distortion effect that happens around the looking glass when you power it on. There's a gantry crane up at the top, and the little guy is dropped down and goes inside. That's like your barrel inside the mechanism there. And this is where all the action happens. This is where the Stargate opens, the wormhole into the higher realms. In this frame, we're seeing how the whole thing collapsed and fell apart. So, of course, you want to take a ride. You know, the new the new formation of the one after the old one breaks. And here we're seeing the new one. Once again, you get a very clear view, and there's your little eye with the rays coming off it, just like the all-seeing eye on the dollar. Not surprising.